Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here. Even though I've covered the topic of sugar and insulin and glycemic index until I'm blue in the face, I still seem to get a lot of questions about it, and they even come up in the Monday Q&As. So I just want to briefly cover the sugar content in your diet and if it really matters or not. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Okay, people ask this a lot, and people are asking continually if sugar is going to be more fattening per calorie than other macronutrients, if it's going to lead to diabetes if they eat too much sugar, and so on and so forth. I really want to cover this from a fitness perspective and from the perspective of people who train, because my channel is not for sedentary people. If you're sedentary, the best advice I can give you is get off your ass and start training. If you're paralyzed from the waist down, then work your upper body. No excuses. Go train. So, that being said, I want to address this from a couple of different points. First of all, as far as glycemic index goes, nobody uses this anymore. Glycemic index is considered to be pretty much worthless in the nutrition world now, and if you just go study the way that we measure it, it becomes very obvious why it's worthless. And on top of that, even if glycemic index mattered, everyone gets caught up in this term sugar, which just means simple carbohydrates, and they don't seem to realize that some of the high sugar foods out there have the lowest glycemic indexes. Now, another thing people want to point out, they want to discuss the topic of diabetes, and let's look at that closely. We know that the biggest factors in diabetes are genetics, activity level, and total caloric intake versus calories out, as well as body fat. So what you find is that you can become diabetic almost regardless of what the intake of your diet is. If you are genetically predisposed to it, you are obese, and you are sedentary. That is how you're most likely to become diabetic, not from eating sugar. And in fact, if you're at a healthy body fat and you're very active, you weight train, you do high intensity types of training, your odds of becoming diabetic are very, very slim. And what you're going to find is that your sugar intake at that point isn't going to be a factor. Unless, of course, you're overeating so much of it that you're becoming obese, which goes back to obesity, and it wouldn't matter if those calories are coming from sugar or not. So you can disregard that. It's almost irrelevant. And in fact, the way that your body processes and partitions nutrient and has insulin response to your foods is more tied to your level of athleticism and your activity level than it is the types of foods you eat. So the only sugar that we really concern ourselves with is fructose, because there is a lot of data showing that fructose, when chronically consumed above 50 grams by sedentary obese people, exacerbates the negative health effects of being sedentary. It dramatically exacerbates them, and it can elevate liver enzymes. It messes your cholesterol up. It causes insulin insensitivity. But it's not the root cause. It seems to only exacerbate what already exists. And I've seen one study, and people have tried to use this to debate this with me on it. I don't have it handy. You guys can go look it up yourselves, or because I don't have it. You can find it just as easily as I can, where they pointed out that there was a study done where young healthy males, but they did not discuss their activity level. They didn't say if they trained, and that's the key point, who consumed 80 grams of fructose a day. And remember, 80 grams of fructose, to get that from something like table sugar, would require 160 grams of sugar from table sugar a day, or it would require something like 50 bananas a day. So we're talking about over 700 calories, or around 700 calories of pure table sugar a day. That's quite a bit. And they did start seeing declining health markers when compared to the control group after just a couple of weeks of chronic intake there. But we don't really know in athletic populations if it's a risk or not. I oftentimes advocate and say, hey, try to limit yourself to 50 grams a day based upon the research on the sedentary, but the issue is that we know it only exacerbates the problems of being sedentary. And the same with these healthy young men. Just because they were healthy and young doesn't mean that they were active. or that they were athletic. And I've known of a couple of people who eat huge amounts of sugar in various forms, whether it's fruit or table sugar or other things, who consume over the 50 grams of fructose a day, well over, whose blood work still looks good. Their cholesterol looks good, their triglycerides look good. They don't seem to suffer any of the negative effects that we've seen in those studies. So it really begs the question of, until we actually study it in athletic populations, we don't know if it's a negative or not to consume that. But we know even in the sedentary, staying under 50 grams of fructose a day is not a problem. And here's the problem that we run into, and it's the same issue we run into when people try to advocate low-carb diets. Just like when they start attacking fructose intake and sugar intake, the problem we run into is that they're trying to make diets to reduce the negative effects in regards of body fat and health that comes with being sedentary and not training. And these special restrictive diets and studies on these diets are done, and millions of dollars are wasted on this, when the simple solution is get your ass up off the couch and go squat 2 or 3 times a week and start doing higher intensity forms of cardio like hill sprinting or interval training. Do high intensity training 3 times a week, and you won't need special diets for sedentary people. And you're going to find that most of these health markers that all these diets are used to fix, and monitoring sugar intake are used to fix, are going to just improve as a result of the training without making changes in your diet necessarily. Now, the only negative thing I will say that we could say about a very high sugar diet is that if a person is consuming huge amounts of refined sugars, even if they are very active and they're not suffering those negative health effects, is that they may not be getting enough fruits and vegetables and other whole foods to get all of their vitamins and minerals they need, and even phytonutrients that they need for optimal health. And that's the biggest argument we could make, but people worry about the sugar intake and all these whole foods too. I see people getting overly concerned about the sugar intake because they're eating a bunch of bananas or tomatoes on their MyFitnessPal saying they went over a sugar limit. And there's simply no need for that. It's completely silly to even track that, or to even know what your total sugar intake is in regards of just the term sugar, because it's completely irrelevant in regards to your physique. You need to know your total calories and your total carbs, but you don't need to know your total sugar. It's not significant. For the most part, your body doesn't know the difference in terms of body composition or health between sugar and complex carbs at the end of the day. And anyone telling you otherwise doesn't know the biology and nutrition behind it. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you next time.